Morning, everyone, and delighted you can make it. Friends from old as well, which is delightful to see you here, and colleagues and new associates. So thank you and welcome for joining us. We've spent a bit of time thinking hard about what this should be because we've been inundated a lot with clients around how do we deal with the new technology? How do we protect our customer experience? How do we protect the quality of what we do in the face of this new technology? And this whole idea of humanizing digital, ensuring you protect the human instinct within the quality of the experience you give with technology, and understanding how to balance the benefits of automation, but with the quality of empathy in a rapidly changing customer experience landscape is what the title of this is. And I'm delighted that a number of you actually clearly see this as being very important. At CGA, we spent 20 odd years now actually navigating for clients the quality of experience and helping put the customer at the heart of their business propositions. This is probably in the most profound crossroads I think we've come across. We've been through lots of buffs and changes over the time, but this bit now, with the advent of AI and new technology and the pressures on automation, really is a challenge to understanding what good customer experience is, the benefits it brings, but also how do we establish the right balance for your brand, but also for your customers as well in a rapidly emerging and very different world. When you start to look at it, this is some of the clients we work with, but this idea of the logic of the operations, the target operating model and making things very efficient versus the magic of the experience and how you start to tailor that engagement and relationship across that is something we've been seeing, whether it's, for example, with Hyundai's global brand centre, top left in Seoul, looking across UK rail, thinking about the passenger experience and how that should be improving. Coca-Cola, thinking about actually what does productivity mean and can we embrace technology, but still deliver a really meaningful experience. Then our friends in the Middle East with ADNOC on petrol stations, Cunard in terms of the cruise experience, and then in Gibraltar Bank in financial services. All of these brands are grappling with digital transformation, but trying to do it through a customer lens in a way that's meaningful and relevant to them. And what I want to do today is just really explore this challenge between automation and empathy and the degree to which it is something that you can embrace and what does that mean. And I'm going to try and draw on a number of insights from Europe, but also looking further afield to the Middle East and also over to the Far East, just in terms of what's happening, and then try to draw some insights out that hopefully are of relevance. And it's against this backlog of frustration, and we're seeing it, I think, in every corner of the business that we work to, certainly post-COVID, where customers' expectations are heightened, and it is driving a sense of frustration in the way they are engaging with or the way that brands are providing services to meet those needs. And that expression of frustration is often coming out in promiscuity, leaving to go somewhere else. Increasingly in certain areas, sadly, it's leading to violence or vehement expression of that opinion, increasing conflict. And therefore a challenge to productivity and mental awareness and anxiety in the workplace. So a whole number of confluences are coming together, and understanding that actually in terms of the digital age and customer experience, it's not just about smiling and saying please and thank you. It's about truly understanding your customers, anticipating their needs, increasingly being on the front foot to understand what they might be feeling, and then using that to deliver seamless, personalized and engaging experiences across all digital and physical touch points. No longer is it good enough just to tokenize, if you like, service through hello, how are you? It's really about a fundamental shift in the way one thinks about delivering an omnichannel experience. And it's interesting, if you look to the Institute of Customer Services, it is the emotional drivers of businesses that are seeing the biggest falls around a sense of customer ethos, around an emotional connection, around the ethics of a business. And these are being challenged critically in the way that people are engaging with brands, and they're looking for emotion and a sense of value and a sense of agency over their control of the experience. I could draw on a whole number of different insights. This is one from PwC. Yeah, 73% of consumers say that a good experience is essential to influence their brand loyalty. Bain have just recently put out a piece which says that, you know, a 5% increase in customer retention is anything between 25 and 95% increase in profit, depending on your sector and business. So increasingly, I think people are seeing the fault line of operational efficiency from the inside out view of the customer, of the organization, to the emotional well-being and feeling satisfaction of the customers. So it's interesting if you start then, okay, so who's winning this battle of loyalty? If it's about loyalty and understanding what that means, and actually loyalty is a sense of a deeper connection with you as a brand. It's interesting, you know, there's a whole range of things, certainly online, that are looking to get your attention. And just pulling out a few of those, it's interesting if you start to look across Europe, you know, Zalando, you know, fashion retailer, have launched, you know, Zalando Plus, really trying to understand and build a sense of community around their shoppers. Sephora, actually Beauty Insider, has again making great strides in terms of scaling their resonance and product proposition with customers and seeing tremendous success in building that sense of loyalty. And IKEA, actually, interesting, IKEA family, building a different type of reward system around the relationship between the home and the brand. And then you start to push the building, the awareness a little further. Monzo, for those of you who kind of got that, but actually the Monzo community is a real drive by them to build a sense of loyalty and connection with their audience. For retail fashion, H&M actually starting to think about their reward club and what that means within the retail space, really understanding and giving not just reward, but a better sense of involvement and connection back to the brand. And at the complete other end, I don't know if those of you have seen Bread Ahead. It's an artisan bakery based in London, but they have seen loyalty through the sense of a loyalty card. It's an unlimited loyalty card, and it's based around visiting the site, but also getting involved in bake classes and rewards related to the product itself. Really trying to connect at an emotional level the product with a sense of occasion and a better understanding of their audiences. They're all examples of brands seeking to try and build a greater sense of loyalty through better engagement and a better sense of relationship. And I think that's the key here, is this shift, an increasingly rapid shift from a transactional mindset to one of long-lasting value relationships. We've been doing quite a bit of work in the UAE and Saudi, and it's interesting because in these societies and cultures, it's almost that they're leapfrogging legacy systems. It's almost that they're jumping into digital far quicker in some ways than some of the Western brands, because they haven't got the limitations of those legacy operations. And if you start to look at that, you know, when you look across the Saudi and the UAE, the Vision 2030 initiative, you know, it's driven a 70% increase in digital service adoption. 90% of all UAE residents use government digital apps monthly. 500 million invested in C2C6 technology in 2024 alone. This is a part of the world that is rapidly recognizing the opportunity for digital, embracing it quickly and driving hard. But the research is interesting because now there's enough evidence to say that actually the consumers, they want real people over machines. And it's interesting that, you know, people prefer inquiring about products or services with a human. People that prefer receiving marketing and sales information from a real person, and people that want a real person to handle their customer support. And I think you're starting to see these fault lines emerging that, depending upon the type of question you have or the type of need you're trying to explore, there's a point where you might be able to automate that response. But actually, to trust somebody, you need to have the perception or the reality of an authentic human experience. And weaving that into your proposition, I think, becomes the absolute challenge, especially when the brand is trying to communicate and engage across a range of different channels. And if you see what they're doing there, it's interesting. If you take people like, for example, Etisalat, they're really starting to understand within their contact centres the need to balance different channels like WhatsApp or Viber, but also with a clarity of the sort of feedback we want to give, and really trying to provide access for customers to engage with them as humans. And they're actively promoting the human interface within their online services. Due, again, in the same space, it's interesting as they start to look at how they, from their support categories, the type of activity, recognizing and understanding the sort of needs that customers are looking for and how they then respond to that, using digital to complement the human need. And then chatbots, and there's obviously a real temptation to automate, to take out and improve your efficiency through the chatbots. Kareem, again, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, really starting to understand the design of their app and to include chatbot support, but in a way that feels human. And they've gone through a human-centered design process to incorporate that into their digital pathways. Zane, actually, again, from a telecoms point of view, really focused hard on separating out the online easy request or support requirement, which can be done by a chatbot, but also clearly identifying those touch points in the journey, those emotional touch points where it demands a human to step in. And so they've really worked hard to put in place different pathways that can separate out and tackle and respond to the sort of human requirement requires a different level of trusted support. And that takes you into the idea of an intuitive customer journey design. And if one looks at Noon, interestingly, from a retail point of view, really understanding that you've got a single point of access for your needs through the app, your mall to your home, but really breaking down and aligning the digital experience to the customer's experience and taking those and embedding those, not only from a functional point of view, but an emotional point of view through the app experience, and really making it an intuitive experience on terms with what you as a customer are looking for. And then how do you make it seamless? And Aramax is a big logistics operator, and this whole, your first last mile delivery, and really starting to understand how you can leverage AI-powered logistics, not dissimilar to what Amazon are doing as well in terms of predictive dispatch within their warehousing, but linking that back to the app, which is giving you confidence and trust and visibility of where your product is, and trying to make that visible aspect of your experience very engaging and trustworthy. And again, it's a way of trying to understand which parts of the experience from a customer's point of view need certain types of emotional underpinning to build that sense of trust. If you think about smart personalization, this whole idea of, how do you start to personalize a relationship to make you feel more special, more engaged, more understood, and can AI assist in that? Riyadh Bank, again, are starting to push the boundaries in Saudi here, really understanding the sort of needs that you have, reflecting that within the app experience, but then starting to think about around you, everything around you in your ecosystem, we can start to support. And we will use AI to support that understanding. We'll absolutely leverage our data and then work with you to create compelling experiences that allow you to get access to your money very quickly and on your terms. So again, starting to understand how you can smartly personalize using technology, but to deliver it in a human-centered way. So that's kind of the Middle East, but if you then keep going and think about the Far East and China, and it's fascinating. We're all seeing what's going on there, but it's actually interesting when you start to dig under the skin, and they have a different perspective to community and relationship. It's more collective than it is individual, and that has its benefits and its drawbacks, but its embracing of digital technology is impressive, to say the least. But it's impressive across all channels, from the influencer to the corporate. And I just want to pick up 2 or 3 examples, just where it's going, where it's really moving at a pace. I will say this wrong, I'm sure, but Meituan or Meituan, but is one of the leading logistics platforms in the country. But it's doing this in a way that's providing critically a single source of access in the ecosystem. And I think what one's seeing here is this trend from a customer's point of view. It is overwhelming in terms of the choices you have to make. And therefore, having a single point of access to a chosen set of needs with a trusted provider becomes critical. And this is one of the most successful in China. And as you can see there, talking about movie and show tickets, ride hailing, food delivery, travel booking, home rentals, Airbnb, all through one single point of access. And the way that is being curated and designed and embedding technology to make that efficient is very impressive, but it's the way it then plays a role in the daily life of consumers. But then it's being pushed further. So welcome to their autonomous home delivery fleet of vehicles. So this is a company that's moving at pace. I could have shown you the one with drones, but suddenly you're seeing this sense of using technology to bring a brand to you on your terms, on your times, when you need it, and using technology to automate and make that as efficient as possible. And I think at the moment, I think it's on average, it's within 30 minutes of delivery with some of these companies now in these metropolitan areas in China. I mean, it's remarkable how efficient it's becoming. I'm not suggesting that is a vision for us, but it's clearly a pressure that we need to understand and respond to. But again, a really interesting example of this single point of access, curating a experience around a known ecosystem of needs. It's also, though, in hotel hospitality. I mean, the Shangri-La, again, is really starting to think deeply about that, as many hotel operators are. But certainly within China, the way they are starting to really embed the experience within the app. And not only that, starting to think about the efficiency and the personalization and the curation of that experience, not just in the hotel, but around the hotel, is becoming really quite impressive. And one of the biggest threats, that is the Neo electric car. Beautiful. Neo, for those of you I'm sure may be aware, but these are the guys who swap in and out the batteries. Really making great strides along with BYD in terms of electric automation. But what's really interesting is how they're kind of learning from what's happened in the past, understanding the technology, but starting to embrace that technology in the way they sell and present the cars. So Neo is coming to Germany, to Denmark, to Sweden, to the Netherlands, really making a statement in the way they sell. But critically, they are really pushing the boundary on how they build relationships with their customers. So this is a business where the executives will fly into Germany and will sit down and meet with customers, talk to them at their what they call their power plants, where they swap in and swap out the battery, take the time to explain. I mean, it's old-fashioned stuff, but done in a new way. They're just taking the time to really connect at a human level and not just look at the car as a piece of technology, but as a mobility essential, and to start to articulate and communicate those values and the essence of what they're doing. And it's really interesting how they're starting to build the scores of relationship and satisfaction with their customers. And it's increasingly seen as a point of differentiation. And when I saw this, I had to smile because this is the Neo House. It's a redefinition of a sales dealership. It's not a car selling environment. It's a mobility engagement arena, which reflects the brand and starts to invite you into the world of Neo and to see things in a very different way. I smile because we did not the prototype, it was the original. We did the Hyundai Global Brand Center in Seoul 6 years ago. And China are doing what they do very well. They watch, they learn, and they exploit that insight, and are presenting the Neo House now as a key part of their emotional engagement with customers to complement the efficiency and technology of the brand. So some insights, I suppose, from Europe, from the Middle East, and from the Far East, really starting to understand how technology is being deployed really quickly. And I wanted to use just one more just to complement that, which I don't know if anybody's stayed in one of these, but the power of surprise and delight. And can you start to use technology to do that in a certain way? And this is Yotel, and they've hotel chain that have consistently built their reputation on embracing innovation and deploying it in a surprising and delightful way. You can't quite make it out there, but on the right-hand side of that picture, looks like a robotic arm because it is a robotic arm. That is their automated luggage management system in the hotel. And that complements the AI robot, the robotic concierge. And that might look futuristic. That is what is being trialed and deployed in Neom in Saudi Arabia by Yotel. They are taking the technology and they believe they can effectively automate the hotel and have the automated robotic concierge and check-in. That might not be for all of us, but it's coming and it's coming quickly. And the moment that robot looks like a robot with a human face, but looking at what's coming down the line, that will look like a human face on a human body in not too distant a future. So at what point the blurring of reality from technology is going to start blending very quickly. So again, understanding who you trust, how can you trust, and what is the sort of environment I want to be in from a customer's point of view becomes a real priority, because this is moving so quickly that brands need to understand this in a holistic 360 way, not just in a siloed technology way. So when we talk about those new challenges, you then get into the world of AI agents and robots. And I know we're all hearing these and talking them. I'm sure many of you are considering those now and using them. But what's interesting is the implication of them, because I think what you're seeing is this idea now of the agent becoming the new middleman to your lifestyle, to the brands you work with. So they become your agent. We saw that, I suppose, a little bit with Alexa. Alexa, can you tell me the weather or put the music on? But increasingly, the ability to train your AI agent to run aspects of your life efficiently is emerging, or companies are training their agents to be the interface with the customer in a way that can understand them possibly far better than their existing agents can, the human agents can. And so understanding how you tailor that experience in a human way becomes critical. So it's not like I'm dealing with a bloody robot, but actually I'm not. I'm just dealing with the brand, and that feels really very good because they understand me, they've leveraged my data, but they're making that personal on my terms. And I think you're going to see that then linked to the idea of AI-powered virtual assistants. Again, why wouldn't you? I suppose if somebody can be there to support you, understand your needs, just make your life more efficient in a complex world, you can see how this starts to actually play out. I suspect that will also be in the business environment, having your own virtual assistant to support you, making things more productive and more efficient. But again, it's how you then tailor and train that assistant to do things on your terms or improve it. And this becomes interesting. The idea of the robo-advisors. We work with an international finance business, interestingly, who have agents on the ground. We have financial services organizations with advisors. In fact, any business where there's a form of advice being imparted by the brand to the customer can start to look at how you might use the robotic advisor to support that in whichever way it is. Citizens' advice in the UK, looking to streamline and drive costs. Can the robo-advisor help? There's a leap of faith between the customers trusting that support, but for the organizations who understand the need to build that trust and design that through the human-centered world, there is clearly an opportunity to automate and improve the efficiency whilst elevating the quality of the experience. And I don't know how many remember Minority Report with Tom Cruise walking down that street and literally being bombarded with personalized adverts for him, which felt dystopian. But it is coming in its own way, in its revisions, that this idea of hyper personalization in marketing and being able to actually target you on your terms at that moment in the journey is evolving, and you're seeing that coming. And again, is that an opportunity? Is that a threat? It needs to be done through a human lens to make it effective, but it's clearly an opportunity to engage and build a relationship meaningfully when you need it most. So again, some new challenges emerging. And you then get to the question, I suppose, of, well, actually, this looks all very good. To what degree can we harness this technology to automate our process in the customer experience? And it's beguiling. McKinsey, of all things McKinsey, but their recent study, um, businesses that implement automation can reduce operational costs by up to 30%. And you start to think about, well, what does that mean? Well, just already projected cost savings through AI driven, so not other digital technology, but just AI driven automation. Um, Operational cost reduction, 30%. Return on investment, 240% ROI. Adoption rates, 75% of it is projected to utilize. So there's a fever around embracing this because of the prize of improvement. And in a low growth, negative growth economy, those temptations are both real, they're immediate, and I suppose they're very apparent. But at what cost? What human cost in terms of trust and loyalty? And I think here is where the rubber hits the road, is that you can drive down that road of automation, but if you haven't put in place a structured, planned experience where you understand where the organization interfaces with the customer and all of those points of friction and potential frustration that actually damage relationships and lead to a lack of loyalty, is where the issue is. Because if you consistently look at the lens of how do we save cost and our shareholder value, you lose the opportunity for customer lifetime value. And increasingly in the world we're going into, it is the ability to retain your customers that will be the essence of a good business. So this interface between balancing operational opportunity with branded engagement is real and critical. And that demands that actually the most powerful digital experiences, they're not just smart, but actually they're emotional. And one of the challenges of the world we're in is that we're driving out the emotion within businesses, the ability to empathize with customers through reducing cost and making things more efficient. And so there is a need to just reflect, I think, within businesses on how we ensure that we deliver a smart experience that adds value, but they still retain that sense of human emotion. And it's interesting, why does a human-centered customer experience matter? It's interesting. Airbnb, I don't know how many of you used them recently, but I mean, they are having to move, I suppose, quickly to really understand it's not just about the location you rent, it's the experience you have within that location. And it's the type of experience. And I've used it a few times now. And I think the idea of these authentic experiences in that locale, based on you, giving you the tools to select what you want on your terms with people who are local and making a virtue of that, is really interesting. It has its challenges, and you only start to see some of the leisure tourism revolts happening in the Balearics and Madrid, Spain, and everything else, pushing back on tourism. So I accept that there are other challenges, but in terms of a brand really trying to understand how its proposition relates through a lens of local authenticity, but using technology to make that efficient, is very impressive. And the filters they use increasingly are refined, giving you the tools to really change and adapt what you're doing at that locality on your terms very quickly and very cost effectively. We work, one of our clients is Dudley Building Society. They're not big, but crikey, they are absolutely committed to that sense of community. James Patterson is the chief exec, and coming in just over 2 years ago now, took a position that we need to put the customer at the heart of our proposition. We are a mutual society based in Dudley. We serve a role and we must be servants to that role, and we need to understand our community and our customers. So let us really go down the mine of what that means. Tremendously successful. And it's all around where can we deploy better technology to improve the process of efficiency? Can we change the processes we use? But can all of those activities be done through a lens of customer insight and ensure that actually what we do is about, as a purpose-driven brand, we're there to help make people's lives better lives. So a really great reference case if you're looking for an organisation in the UK who start to really embrace this in a meaningful way. So this idea of humanising the digital journey it isn't just a trend, it is a necessity actually now. I think it's more than just a choice. It's if you're not doing this, then you're going to be on the back foot very quickly. It moves from being an opportunity to a burning platform very quickly indeed. Um, and it's this sense of, at the heart of it, is understanding that organizations need to understand how to build empathy into their organizations, to really understand what it's like to walk in the customer's shoes, to understand at what touch point do we do what to help build and engage and maintain and retain our customer relationships. And critically, that's about actually turning inwardly to understand how we support our organizations to build that empathy. What is it like to work with a diamond manufacturer, which we did before, who actually had no idea of what happened to those diamonds after they left their business? And we have a maxim that says, if you can understand your customer's customer better than your customer, then you can add value. And I think that's, again, that sense of being able to empathize with the circumstances of your audience allows you to do some very special things. I talked before about the Neo House and the Global Brand Center in Seoul. This is it. This is Hyundai's Global Brand Center in Seoul, Goyang. The blue bit is 9 stories high. The glass is 5 stories, and below ground are 6 stories. On the first 2 of those levels below ground are 120 car service bays. Very different environment. The whole question there was, how do we overlay on this incredible testament to technology an emotional experience that is world class in the way it delivers that digital experience at every touch point. In this way, we kind of, and I don't want to show this because actually it's the idea of mapping out this end-to-end experience, understanding through the customer's eyes the points that matter most and the gaps that exist between what you're proposing and what is needed start to play out. And it allows you then effectively a design canvas to work with. In this case, we designed a whole digital experience that went end to end across the journey, taking global best practice through probably 30 of the world's best visitor attractions, but deploying that into a Korean mindset and a nation mindset, and then a global mindset to really understand how to elevate and communicate the Hyundai brand values emotionally at every single touch point. And actually very successfully, but it was a really interesting way of putting in a framework for translating those needs into actions that were wrapped around a digital cover. Very different, some work we did in the Middle East with ADNOC, who the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. This was around, 70-80% of their staff come from third world countries, Philippines, India, Africa. It's hard work. You're in 40 degrees of heat serving Emirati clientele. And the question is, how do you start to improve the quality of that experience, but using digital innovation to build a better sense of engagement and relationship? And in this case, again, by thinking through in a structured way, but recognizing what the experience is like, not just at the pump when you first arrive, and understanding where you can start to harness technology, but on the terms of what the customer needs. Uniquely to the Middle East, they also have prayer centers within the call center, so you can stop and pray and take prayer through the day, as well as thinking about the petrol pump attendant and also then the retailing side of things. Again, understanding the human overlay and then how can technology help has made a massive difference in terms of the engagement, but also the loyalty of customers. So I suppose in the final section, we're just touching on the role of empathy. Empathy involves understanding the feelings and needs of customers, which can help you then lead to a more personalized and effective interaction at that moment. And I think that's where, we've designed something called CJ Empathy Lab. It's the only plug of the session, but it's a really interesting vehicle by which we're helping people immerse themselves in the world of the customer, literally to walk in their shoes. It's highly inclusive, deliberately designed to understand and bring alive the varying needs of customers. And it's immediate. It's about making every single moment matter in that experience. And to give you a flavor, when you start to think about the challenges of, well, it might be neurodiversity, could be disability, It could be mental anxiety. Mental anxiety in the rail industry accounts for something like 14 to 15% of productivity loss. And that's often attributed to the mental well-being through conflict management on board trains. So there's some real issues here that doesn't, you talk about mental anxiety in the abstract, it's real. And there are ways you can manage that. Vulnerability is a huge topic. Again, in mobility, what it's like to be feeling vulnerable and safe when you're traveling, or indeed within the workplace. Managing conflict. Again, how do you start to understand the tenets of what causes conflict and how can you manage that differently? And then just language, the intergenerational cultural challenge of running businesses. We have very different groups of audiences now emerging, my end of the spectrum to my daughter's end, coming in very differently. Different language, different expectations. And so understanding how to manage those cultural differences again becomes a real challenge, which demands an empathy of where and understanding where those customers are, so you can then respond and align the business to meet those needs in the right way. And I think at the heart of, when you start to think about our philosophy, our job, CGA, but again, our jobs as practitioners, there are many customers out there, and we're trying to narrow those down to cohorts, personas, segments, however you might want to talk about it. But you are trying to understand patterns to whom you can engage and build a sense of loyalty and a sense of response. We are absolutely focused on this sense of, philosophy. If you make someone feel valued, they will value you, leading to a more enduring and profitable relationship. It is all about creating a sense of agency for the customer, that they feel in control of the situation in a world that's rapidly running out of control, that they feel recognized for who they are on their terms and what drives them. And there is a sense of respect for them and their situation. And that respect is reflected in the way they are treated in the engagement they have or with you. And they feel included, and that sense of inclusivity linked to diversity and linked to the value of being a more diverse representative organization allows you as an organization to build more informed, more engaging propositions because of that insight. And you create spaces that are psychologically safe, physically safe for people to be themselves. And we see these 5 pillars have been really key in the way that one should be thinking about a more empathetic organization. Being in control, recognized, respected, included, and safe. If you understand those dimensions, you can then start to embed those through a human-centered design process into an experience that is supported by and delivered by really efficient automation and technology. So in summary, I suppose this is about making every moment matter through a customer experience point of view. How do you listen deeply to customers on a consistent basis? How do you start to position the brand, understand your brand for what it's trying to stand for? And how do you nuance the delivery of those values and that thing through your communication, through the touch points, the touches that your staff give, through the quality of the package that's delivered at home? Is the brand really being reflected in a human way at those key moments? Can you reinforce trust at points you didn't do before? And that says, can you design the experience step by step that interfaces technology with process, with behavior? Because those 3 combine together to give you an optimum experience at each step of the journey. And it allows you then to understand where you can create the seamless handoff. Where can you use technology efficiently through the chatbot to do that? And where could it be a seamless handoff to the human to then interface to build trust with you in the way they handle that? And critically, how do you allow the organization to walk in your customer's shoes to understand their needs better, by which you can then start to adapt and tailor things differently? And just a final thought, which complements that, is that technology should serve humanity. It should not replace it. And I think that was said by Tim Berners-Lee some time ago. And I think it holds truer now than what it did before. And that the way we're seeing customer experience evolve, we need to have a really opportunistic sense of this, because this technology is fantastic, but it needs to be tailored and designed in the right way to support our customers. Thank you. I hope that was interesting, and delighted you could be there. And there's a little time, I think, Nikki, if you want to take some questions, that we can do that as well, or at least a discussion as well. It doesn't have to be just questions to me, but if anyone has any points to raise, then that would be lovely.
Yes, indeed. I was going to hand over to my colleague Mickey, who's controlling questions and answers, but I can't see anything in the chat at the moment. But just to obviously speak for a moment and give people the opportunity to type any questions if they've got anything they want to air now, please do so. Otherwise, if you think of something afterwards or want to get in touch and have a chat, then Chris is available to do that. So do just get in touch with us. As I said, I will be sharing the recording as well, so do feel free to pass that around to any colleagues that you think might find it interesting too. Any questions? It doesn't seem there's any at the moment. Thank you for that comment.
Caroline, thank you. And glad you could make it, actually. I hope that was, it was good to see you. And thank you for your time.
Questions, we will call it a day there. And as I say, I'll be circulating the recording very soon. Thanks very much for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Okay, good to see you guys. Thank you. Thanks for joining.